What if I told you the real shift happens not when they leave, but when you finally stop waiting for them to value you again? When someone stops appreciating your presence, your instinct might be to chase, to explain, to prove your worth. But what if the most powerful thing you could do is nothing? Just pull back, not with anger, but with quiet strength. Because here's what they never see coming. The moment you stop accepting the bare minimum, the second you stop showing up where you're just tolerated, everything changes. You withdraw your energy with grace, you let silence do the talking, and you focus on becoming the kind of person who no longer craves their validation. And in that stillness, you rise, you grow, you evolve into someone so magnetic, so grounded, that when or if they return, they meet someone they can't access anymore. That's when the regret kicks in. Not because you told them off, but because you've become someone they no longer qualify for. If they stop valuing you, do this one thing, and I promise they'll feel the loss where it hurts most. Let's talk about how to do it step by step. You know what's fascinating? When someone stops valuing you, our first instinct is often to do more, to over-explain, to overgive, to prove our worth in some way. It's like we feel this deep need to remind them, hey, remember how amazing I am? Why aren't you treating me the same? But here's the problem. The more you try to prove yourself to someone who's stopped seeing your value, the further away your power slips. You start pouring energy into a space that's no longer holding it. And that's not strength. That's self-abandonment. We think, if I just do a little more, if I stay available, if I show them how much I care, maybe they'll come back around. But what actually happens? They don't wake up. They don't appreciate it. In fact, they start valuing you less because what you're doing, even with the best intentions, is showing them that they can offer less and still keep you, that your presence is guaranteed even when their effort is not. That's the trap. The one thing, and I mean the one thing, that flips the entire dynamic is withdrawing your energy. But here's the nuance. Not in anger, not in bitterness, not in some dramatic exit designed to provoke guilt or attention. That kind of exit is loud, but not powerful. Real power is quiet. It doesn't scream, look at me walking away. It simply steps back and lets absence do the talking. Because the truth is, energy is felt. You can tell when someone has emotionally checked out. You feel when someone stops trying, even if they're still physically there. And it works both ways. People can feel it when you stop chasing, when you stop over-explaining, when you stop making them the center of your emotional world. That shift, it's subtle, but it's everything. When someone stops valuing you, it's not your job to reconvince them of your worth. It's your job to reconnect with the part of you that never needed them to see it in the first place. That part of you, the strong, grounded part, knows that your value doesn't decrease just because someone else stopped noticing it. It was always there. It just got buried under the noise of trying too hard. Pulling back your energy doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring in a way that protects you. It means choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over validation, dignity over desperation. It means knowing that your silence, your absence, can speak volumes far more than any plea for attention ever could. That's when people start to notice. That's when they realize something's changed. Because when you were giving and available and emotionally wide open, they got comfortable. They got used to you being there, regardless of how they showed up. But when that changes, when your energy is no longer accessible, they feel the difference. And often, that's when regret begins to form. Now, does this guarantee they'll come back or suddenly start treating you right? No, and that's not the point. This isn't about playing games to manipulate a reaction. This is about shifting the power back to where it belongs, within you. It's about refusing to be emotionally dependent on someone who's no longer showing up for you in a meaningful way. Because the longer you stay in that pattern of overgiving, the more you reinforce the idea that you'll tolerate being undervalued. But the moment you stop, the moment you reclaim that energy and reinvest it in yourself, you begin to glow differently. Not out of revenge, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. And that kind of transformation doesn't just change how they see you, it changes how you see you. Suddenly, you remember how peaceful it feels not to beg for breadcrumbs. You realize how much more alive you feel when your energy is directed inward, not chasing someone who stopped appreciating it. And you begin to attract people who mirror that value back to you. People often ask, how do I make them regret losing me? You don't. You live in such a way that they realize, all on their own, that losing you was their biggest mistake. And that starts by doing the one thing most people are too scared to do. Pull back quietly. No noise, no drama, just a shift. A shift in where your energy flows. A shift in who gets access to your time, your love, your presence. The kind of regret that lingers doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from reflection. From someone waking up one day and realizing the silence they're hearing is the sound of someone who finally realized they deserve more. And that is when everything changes. When someone stops valuing you, the first thing your emotions want you to do is chase. It's a natural response. We feel the shift in energy. The messages slow down, the calls stop, the enthusiasm fades. And suddenly we're no longer operating from a place of calm self-worth. We're reacting out of fear. Fear that we're losing something. Fear that we're not enough. Fear that this connection slipping through our fingers means something about our value. So what do? We panic. We start trying harder, reaching out more, over-explaining, overcompensating. We try to win them back, prove we're worth it, remind them of who we are. But here's the truth. That energy, that desperate, proving energy, pushes them further away. Not because you're not lovable, not because you're not worthy, but because value isn't proven through effort alone. It's proven through how you respond when someone stops showing up. The most powerful thing you can do when someone stops valuing you is to stop focusing on them altogether. Take that energy you were investing in trying to revive something dead and pour it back into yourself. That means letting go of the story that says, if they just saw how good you were again, they'd change. That narrative keeps you stuck in a loop of seeking their approval. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more of yourself you lose. The goal is not to get them to see your worth. The goal is to never forget it yourself. People will always be drawn to someone who values themselves deeply. Not in an arrogant way, but in a grounded, quiet, unshakable way. You don't need to post 1,000 things to prove you're okay. You don't need to broadcast how much better off you are. You just need to actually be okay and work towards becoming even better. It's not about pretending you're over it. It's about redirecting your focus from the loss to the opportunity. Because when they stop showing up, when they stop trying, when they stopped appreciating you, they created a vacuum. And most people rush to fill that vacuum with explanations, arguments, emotional appeals. But what if, instead of filling the silence with their name, you filled it with yours? Use that space. Ask yourself, what parts of me did I put on the shelf while trying to be enough for them? What did I stop doing for myself when I started making them the center of my world? Where have I been people-pleasing to avoid losing them instead of being fully honest about my own needs? This is your moment to reclaim yourself. Sign up for that class you've been putting off. Reconnect with friends you lost touch with because your energy was tied up in someone who couldn't meet you half. Take care of your body, your mind, your spirit. Build routines that fill you up. Laugh again, but not to make a point. Laugh because you found joy in something that had nothing to do with them. Heal not to prove you're unbothered, but because you actually want peace more than you want attention. You become magnetic, not when you're chasing someone, but when you're running toward your own life. That's the irony. The moment you truly shift your focus back to yourself, not out of spite, but from a place of self-love, people notice. They notice the version of you they no longer have access to. And it makes them wonder, did I misjudge what I had? But here's the thing, you don't do this so they come back. You do this so that even if they do, you're no longer waiting. You've moved so far forward that their regret isn't something you need. It's just something that happens in the rearview mirror because you've stepped into a new chapter where your value is no longer tied to someone else's ability to see it. And maybe, just maybe, one day they'll look at the version of you that emerged from their neglect and think, I never should have let them go. But by then, you'll have long stopped needing to hear it. We have to talk about something that so many people overlook, the power of refusing the bare minimum. Because here's the truth, people don't always stop valuing you because they suddenly don't care. Sometimes they stop valuing you because you kept showing up after they stopped trying. You kept answering the texts that came days late. You kept accepting the last-minute plans. You kept tolerating the mixed signals, the emotional unavailability, the excuses masked as vulnerability. And in doing so, you taught them, not intentionally, but you taught them that it was okay to give you less. And the heartbreaking part is you didn't do it because you had no standards. You did it because you cared, because you saw potential, because you wanted to believe that if you gave them a little more time, a little more understanding, they'd rise to meet you. But what actually happened is they started to think, I don't really need to put in effort. She's already here. She's already invested. She's already choosing me. We assume people will appreciate what we give just because it comes from a good place. But people don't appreciate effort if they've never had to earn it. That's the mistake. We give love with our whole heart, and then we wonder why it's not respected. The problem isn't the love, it's where we're placing it. You can't keep handing diamonds to someone who doesn't even know how to recognize a stone. And if they never had to work for your attention, if they never had to show up consistently to win your respect, they won't understand the value of losing you until they actually do. So, what do you do when someone gives you less than you deserve? You stop showing up for potential. You stop rewarding inconsistency with loyalty. You stop convincing yourself that a little bit of affection is enough to justify a whole relationship. Because the moment you normalize the bare minimum is the moment you teach them that's all they need to give. Let's be honest, the fear that kicks in when we think about pulling away isn't really about them, it's about us. We're scared that if we stop accepting what little they give, we'll lose them altogether. But that's not love. That's survival mode. That's your fear of being alone talking. That's the echo of old wounds telling you that even a little attention is better than none. And that mindset is what keeps people trapped in cycles of being undervalued. But here's something you need to hear. What you tolerate becomes your standard. If you accept confusion, you'll get more of it. If you accept disrespect, inconsistency, half-airfoot gestures, you're telling them this is enough for me. And even if they're not consciously doing it, subconsciously they adjust their behavior accordingly. They stop trying. They stop investing because they think they don't have to. But something shifts the moment you decide to raise the bar. When you calmly, quietly, and confidently stop responding to half-hearted efforts, something changes. When you no longer drop everything, for someone who can't prioritize you, they notice. When you create space instead of chasing, they feel it. And if they ever did care, even a little, that space becomes loud. Loud enough for them to finally realize they were losing something valuable. But more importantly, you start to realize it too. You begin to see how much energy you were spending trying to prove your worth to someone who wasn't even paying attention. You begin to reclaim your peace. You begin to reconnect with the version of you that doesn't need to beg to be seen. And that's the moment the power shifts. Because they may come back, they may try to test the waters, offer just enough to re-engage you, but now you've changed. Now you recognize that love without effort isn't love at all, it's convenience. And you're not here to be someone's convenient option. You're here to be chosen fully and deliberately. The hard truth is, when you stop accepting the bare minimum, some people will disappear. And that's okay, because what's meant for you won't need constant reminding. What's meant for you will rise to meet you. It won't keep you guessing. It won't give you breadcrumbs. It will meet you with clarity, consistency, and commitment. And until that arrives, your job is simple. Protect your standards like your peace depends on it, because it does. If someone stopped valuing you, let that be the moment you stopped accepting less. Not because you're trying to make them regret it, but because you finally remembered what you deserve. When someone stops valuing you, it's easy to start shrinking, to question yourself. You start wondering, what did I do wrong? Or why am I suddenly not enough for them? It's like you're trying to squeeze back into a version of yourself that used to fit them, or more honestly, that used to please them. But here's the truth. Trying harder in the wrong place never leads to the right outcome. Most people, when they sense they're being undervalued, do the opposite of what they should. They double down. They try to prove themselves. They become more available, more accommodating, more emotionally generous, as if somehow that extra effort will reignite someone's appreciation. But all that does is reinforce the imbalance. You're doing more while they're doing less. And over time, that starts to damage your sense of self. Not because you're not worthy, but because you're placing your worth in someone who's no longer giving you a seat at the table with the respect you deserve. So what do you do when someone stops valuing you? You stop trying to fit in where you're no longer celebrated. You shift your focus away from forcing connection and instead move towards spaces that reflect back to you the energy you're putting out. Think about it. Would you keep performing for a crowd that isn't even clapping, that isn't even looking up? Yet we do this in relationships all the time. We stay in rooms where we feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated, hoping that one day someone wakes up and realizes how special we are. But the people who truly value you don't need waking up. They see you. They're already clapping. They're already showing up for you in ways that make you feel safe and supported. And the moment you start investing your energy into those people, into those spaces, everything changes. Not because you're playing some game of revenge, but because your energy begins to reflect your self-respect. When you show up where you're celebrated, something beautiful happens. Your confidence starts to rebuild. You stop questioning your worth because now it's being mirrored back to you. You laugh more, you shine more, you walk differently, and people notice, including the one who stopped valuing you. They see you glowing somewhere else, and suddenly they're not so indifferent anymore. But by then, something else has shifted. You're not the same anymore. You're not waiting for them to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about channeling your care into the right direction, into people and places that multiply your energy instead of draining it. Because let's be honest, staying in a space where you're merely tolerated is exhausting. You start questioning everything, your looks, your words, your presence. But when you're in a space where you're celebrated, there's a lightness to you. You're not walking on eggshells or strategizing every message you send. You're just being. And that's when your most powerful self shows up. So many people waste months, even years trying to convince someone of their value. They create a full-time job out of managing someone else's feelings, navigating mixed signals, and decoding lukewarm behavior. But what if, instead of doing all that, you just walked away, not with anger, but with clarity? What if you stepped into a space where you were embraced, not evaluated? You'd be amazed how quickly your world shifts when you change the room you're standing in. We don't always get to choose who values us, but we do get to choose where we place our time, our heart, and our presence. You don't have to keep proving yourself to someone who stopped showing up for you. You're not here to audition for love, affection, or consistency. The right people won't make you feel like you're fighting for their attention. And you'll never have to question whether you matter in the right room. So if they've stopped valuing you, don't beg for their attention. Don't send a long message. Don't go into over-explaining mode. Just exit quietly. Exit with elegance. And go where the energy feels like a warm invitation instead of a test. Go where you can thrive, not just survive. Because here's what they'll notice later. Not just your absence, but your glow somewhere else. The version of you that blossomed when you stopped waiting to be seen and started putting yourself in places where you were already seen. And that's when the regret hits hardest. Not when you disappear, but when they realize you're better without them. That's the real power. Not making them regret it, but becoming someone who doesn't need them to. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself 100 times to be understood. And you definitely don't need to beg someone to value what they clearly don't see in the first place. The most powerful statement you can ever make isn't a loud one, it's silence. Because silence is unsettling. It forces people to sit with their own discomfort, their own confusion, their own realization that maybe, just maybe, they messed up something meaningful. When someone stops valuing you, our first reaction is almost always to fight for clarity, to get closure, to try to make them understand what they're losing. But here's the truth. People rarely understand your worth when you're desperately trying to prove it. That need to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged, it actually works against you in moments like these. Because what starts as genuine vulnerability can quickly turn into performance. And when you're performing for someone's attention, you're no longer being valued, you're being evaluated. Silence changes the dynamic completely. It's no longer about trying to win someone back. It becomes about reclaiming your power. It says, I don't need to explain my value. I embody it. It's an act of emotional discipline. And that kind of discipline is rare. Most people fold under the pressure of being misunderstood. Most people feel like if they don't say something, they'll be forgotten. But the truth is, the ones who are truly unforgettable are the ones who had the strength to walk away without a dramatic exit. Think about this. When you stop responding, you create a void, a silence. And that silence gets filled not by your words, but by their thoughts, their doubts, their regrets, their what-ifs. Suddenly, they're left alone with their own behavior. And that's a much louder message than anything you could have said. They begin to question themselves. Did I handle that right? Did I push too far? Was I too cold, too inconsistent? That's when the regret starts to brew, not in your presence, but in your absence. But let's be clear, this isn't about playing games. It's not about using silence as a weapon. It's about using it as a boundary that says, I'm not going to keep showing up where I'm not seen. And boundaries aren't loud. They don't come with ultimatums or raised voices. They come with action. Quiet, consistent action that says, I choose peace over confusion. I choose dignity over desperation. And yes, in the beginning, it will be uncomfortable. There's a part of you that will want to check in, to send that one last message, to ask, did I do something wrong? That's your fear talking. That's your inner child still trying to find safety in being chosen, but you're not that person anymore. You're not waiting to be chosen. You've already made your choice. And that choice is self-respect. When you go silent, it doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much to keep tolerating what hurts. It means you finally realize that your value isn't up for negotiation, that being misunderstood by someone who wasn't trying to understand you is not a failure, it's freedom. Freedom from chasing clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. And here's the beautiful part. People remember silence. They remember when someone stopped reaching out, when the calls stopped coming, when the texts went unanswered. They remember the shift. They feel it. And while they may not say it out loud, something inside them starts to miss what they took for granted. That's when the power dynamic shifts. Not because you manipulated anything, but because you respected yourself enough to step away without theatrics. The moment you stop trying to force your worth into someone's awareness is the moment they start to feel the emptiness you left behind. But by then, something important has already happened. You've already healed. You've already evolved. You're no longer that person waiting by the phone. You've become someone who doesn't need their regret to feel whole. And that's the real win. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the silence. Let them wrestle with the weight of your absence. You don't need to break your silence to prove your value. The quiet confidence you hold speaks volumes. And the ones who get it won't need words to feel it. You know, the part people often don't tell you when they say, walk away or pull back your energy is what to do after that. What happens when you've stepped away from someone who've stopped valuing you? What do you do in that silence, in that space where you used to pour your attention, love, and presence? The real secret isn't just in walking away, it's in who you become after you do. That's where the transformation happens. That's where the power is. That's where regret is born. Not in your words, not in your anger, but in your evolution. The most potent form of revenge, if you want to call it that, is not making someone miss you. It's making sure the version of you they once knew no longer exists. Because here's what people do. They assume they can leave or drift or stop putting in effort and that you'll stay the same, that you'll be there when they come back around. They count on your consistency, even when they're inconsistent. They think they can vanish and reappear and find the same person waiting. But what if, when they circle back, they meet someone entirely new, someone who grew, who flourished, who no longer needs their presence to feel valuable? That's what hits hardest. Not that you left, not that you stopped reaching out, but that in the time they took you for granted, you quietly became someone they can't access anymore. And I don't mean you changed to spite them. This isn't about putting on a show or pretending you're okay. It's about going inward. It's about using that disappointment, that sting of being undervalued as fuel. You take every ounce of pain and confusion and redirect it towards something that feeds you. You build habits that make you proud. You find a new rhythm in your day that isn't dictated by how often they text or whether they notice you. You invest in your growth, mentally, emotionally, even physically. You surround yourself with people who reflect back the energy you give. You stop chasing what isn't chasing you and instead become magnetic to what is aligned with you. Because here's the truth. When someone sees that you've elevated your life without them, that you're glowing from within, that your energy is now reserved for people who actually value it, that's when it lands. That's when they realize the door they left open has been closed, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And when you've truly grown, you won't even need to slam that door. You won't need to say, you missed your chance. It'll be obvious. They'll feel it in your presence, or rather, your lack of it. You'll notice something interesting happen too. When you finally step into this version of yourself, your standards naturally rise. You no longer feel flattered by the same crumbs that used to keep you hanging on. You won't be tempted by their breadcrumb apology or lazy check-in text, because you'll know what real effort feels like now. You've seen what it means to be cherished by life itself. by your own progress, your friends, the passion projects that wake you up in the morning, and someone who once offered you scraps. They don't even register the same way anymore. This is the part they never expect. They never imagine that you'll reach a point where they're no longer your desire. That's when it hits. That's when they start to regret not showing up when it counted. They don't just regret losing you, they regret losing access to someone who no longer fits in the same space they left you in. They regret underestimating the quiet resilience you carried. And most of all, they regret assuming you'd wait. You don't need to broadcast it. You don't need to prove it. The shift speaks for itself. The more you become someone who lives with fullness, alignment, and confidence, the more the past becomes just that, the past. And if they ever try to come back, they'll be facing someone who isn't standing in the same spot anymore. That's not rejection. That's reality. You've simply outgrown them. Not in arrogance, but in truth, in honoring yourself, in remembering that the right people will never make you beg for your own worth to be seen. So become someone they can't get back, not because you've blocked them, not because you've hardened your heart, but because you've expanded far beyond the version of yourself they once knew. And trust me, that's when they'll regret it.